Good evening, everyone. It is now 7:00 p.m. and we'll call this meeting to order. Just like to make a statement before we start there. Our national healthcare system is in crisis, and unfortunately, we are seeing this locally as well. We heard last council meeting from the Minto Mapleton Health Professional Recruitment Committee about the desperate need to fill their vacancies. At the end of May, it was announced that the Louise Marshall Hospital and Palmerston Hospital would be closing their obstetrics departments from June 6th to September 6th. This past week, because of a lack of staff, Louise Marshall Hospital is closing their emergency departments on July 16th and 17th from 5 p.m. to 7 a.m. And also this past month at County Council, there was a report regarding the ongoing offloading issues for the Guelph Wellington paramedics at all of our hospitals. Retirements, resignations, burnout, and staff mental health issues are all contributing factors to our current situation locally and nationally. We need all levels of government to work together to repair and upgrade our healthcare system so that no citizen's life is put in jeopardy. As for our local healthcare providers, be kind to them. They are working under extreme conditions that were not brought on by their own doing. I'd like to thank all of our local healthcare providers for serving our residents well. At this point, I'd like to rise, if you can, for the national anthem. Thank you. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Councillor Ottens.
Yes, I do for items 10.3 and 10.4. Work on the Vader drainage works that involves our family farm, Snetto Farms.
Thank you, Councillor Ottens. It is noted. Confirmation of minutes. Bear with me, sort these out. One first. Good. Helps if I have the right pile. Item 4.1, moved by Councillor Douglas, second by Councillor Ottens, that the minutes of the Township of Mapleton Council meeting held on June 14, 2022 be confirmed as circulated in the agenda package. Any questions, comments? All in favor? That's carried. So matters arising from the minutes. We have matters under the Planning Act for ZBA 2022-06. This is a public meeting under the Planning Act to hear comments from the public and agencies and to give consideration to an application ZBA 2022-06 for a proposed zoning bylaw amendment. Subject lands are located at part lot 16, 17, and 18, concession 1, a severed parcel from 7321 Wellington Road 86. The purpose and effect is to allow a home industry. Mr. Clerk will now give us the statutory requirements.
Thank you, sir. Staff can confirm all statutory agencies and ratepayers were provided with the required notice on the 23rd of June. No objections were received from the County of Wellington Planning Department, Wellington Source Water Protection, and the GRCA. Internally, Mapleton's Building Department, Fire Department, and Public Works had no concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We'll now hear from planner Linda Redmond. Linda.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. So this is currently a vacant parcel. Council has seen these lands before them a couple times now. They severed this half of the farm off of Mr. Bauman's property a number of months ago. So now this is the newly created farm parcel. It's currently vacant. They're proposing a 7,000 square foot building for various home industry uses, as well as a 538 square foot power building, Jenny, that sort of thing. So we include that into the floor area. They're also proposing a dwelling and farm buildings at some point as well. The home industry is an accessory use to the farming operation, so they have to go hand in hand. We have no concerns with the application. We knew that this was the development down the road once the consent was finalized. They have access from a laneway that will be on Yacht Side Road, and we have no concerns with the application.
Thank you. Does the applicant have any comments or further explanation? Mr. Martin? So, no. Thank you. Any comments from those in attendance? Please indicate so by stating your name and address for the record. We'll first hear from those in support of this zoning amendment, and then we will hear presentation from those opposed. The applicant may respond to any concerns. Do we have anybody here wishing to speak in support of this application? Anybody here wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Any questions from council members and to the applicant or the planner? This public meeting is now concluded. Thank you for attending this public meeting. The resolution here at item 6.1, moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Douglas, that the planning report regarding ZBA 2022-06, part lots 16, 17, and 18, concession 1 be received for information. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Item number 6.2, we have a planning report here. Resolution moved by Councillor Douglas, second by Councillor Ottens, that the Township of Mapleton Council receive for information the planning report by Linda Redmond regarding the Rossay deeming bylaw for the lands described as lots 190 to 205, 216 to 269, part lots 7 to 17, part park lot 18, Paul Street, part of James Street, part of Nelson Street, Catherine Street, Wellington Street, plan of Rossay Maryborough as in R082061, subject to DN 1328, now in the Township of Mapleton. And further, that council consider the attached draft deeming bylaw, which will deem the lots not to be lots on the registered plan for the purpose of subsection 3 of section 50 of the Planning Act. After all that, Linda, over to you.
Well, we're finally here. I think this started in 2013, so it's happening. So this is the final step in deeming these lands to take them out of, lift the old plan of subdivision that is currently located on them. We've worked with the landowner, Mr. Mitchell, who owns the lands, to facilitate the development of the one lot for him, and that's done now. So this is actually going to satisfy a couple conditions, one of his consent and one of his minor variants that went through, I believe, last year. So yeah, this is the final step.
Thank you. Questions from council then? Seeing no questions, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? That's carried. Moving on to delegations and the matters arising from delegations, item 7.1. See me here. Okay. The 7.1, we have Lawrence Cudlip, and we're talking about the Green and Inclusive Community Buildings Program funding. Lawrence. It's nice to see you in person. I think the last time was a video not too long ago, but yes, yeah, you look totally different, much younger than I saw in video.
There we go. How's that? Okay. So I'm very happy to be here and spend a few minutes with all you fine folks and just go through the program we were involved in with the township. I guess this was back in the fall that we were engaged with Manny and Sam working on trying to get some funding for an expansion to the PMD arena. So first of all, really brief introduction about myself. I'm a partner and senior director for architecture for SEMA Canada and our offshoot architectural company, which is called C2 Architecture. We were retained, as some of you may know, to help with the immediate renovation needs at the PMD arena, and that had to do with washroom upgrades and putting a new universal washroom there. But as a sort of tail end to that, we were involved with Manny and our group internally to see if we could wrestle some federal funding loose to see a large expansion to the arena. That funding application was made, and we received the unfortunate news that wasn't accepted. We did a little bit of internal back and forth after getting that little bit of bad news. And it would seem that one of probably the biggest detriments to our application was the fact that it wasn't quote unquote shovel ready. The government in its mysterious, the federal government in its mysterious ways, we're never sure exactly what deems a project exactly shovel ready or not. But I've been on projects where what we've submitted for you guys met the standard of due diligence, and funding was found its way to that particular client, and that went back to the infrastructure funding free for all back in 2012. So I think it's a my message here tonight is hopefully positive. It's not that we didn't get the money, it's that we didn't get it yet. There are other avenues we can go after. I will talk about those briefly. I wanted to just show you, I'm not sure how conversant everybody was with the application and the process and where we were with the so-called, I would say, fairly robust concept design, and then talk to you briefly about what some of the other funding streams are that are available to the township that can be looked at, including the one we approached actually with this one, the GICB funding stream has a second intake, and it is due to be opened some point later this year. There's no dates yet. But we will talk to you tonight briefly. I'll talk to you about how to maybe position ourselves a little bit better for that one. So on to the illustrious presentation of the design. So this design program was accelerated by a factor of probably 10. Like normally we would go through a more exhaustive programming exercise to determine all the space needs and requirements for the project. I identify very clearly budget constraints, the must-haves, the nice-to-haves. That's a project timeline that usually takes months, and we did this in a few weeks. But we did sort of nail down some main project objectives, which I think would carry forward no matter what. Without getting into the weeds too much on anything I want to talk about, a lot of this had to do with expanding, and you'll see the plans I'm going to show you in a second, the facility to allow for a multi-court space, additional meeting rooms that could be paired up or singly divided so that it was multifunctional spaces, improving accessibility, definitely hitting some big marks on green design, sustainable design elements, things like solar, low use water, features, I mean, those are almost a given now. They're almost entrenched in the building code, but things like low VOC materials, locally derived building materials, things like that. Those all drive sustainable goals. They don't necessarily get you a LEED building, but they definitely contribute to that. So that's sort of the general flush of where the programming objectives were going. And then on the next slide, I know it's kind of small. So basically, does it work? It works on the screen though. Okay, so I can use this to. So basically the main arena, if you can sort of see it here, and unfortunately, this could have been probably rendered a little bit better so you could actually see the arena expansion. So we're leaving the ice pad alone, save and except for some work along the back side of the building with I think the referees rooms and maybe the ice plant. But generally the approach was to create a much bigger assembly space, which could be doubled as an assembly space and used as sports facilities, like for multi-use court, things like volleyball, basketball, pickleball, anything under the sun you could play on a hard surface like that inside. So the building massing, which again, these are early days ideas, was seen as very simple, making use of natural daylight with what we call high-level clear story windows. So that brings in diffuse light to not necessarily eliminate your cost of lighting, but to seriously diminish the cost of operating the building, which ultimately is the goal behind the GICB funding package. You have to demonstrate that you're bettering the operational costs and by a percentage of, I think, 25% over the Canadian standard. So anyway, some big ideas about, and this is the great part of a project like this, we get to just come up with this stuff and don't really have to get into the nitty gritty. But I think we came up with a fairly pleasing and definitely functional design. So if we can move to I'll just show you these quick images. And I don't know, is this PDF made available to everybody on council, I guess? So it's maybe hard to see, but 3 different views, the numbers thusly, so you can get a sense. We improved the entrance, put a nice turnaround, had a back door entrance, a play area at the back. So there was a dual purpose and increased the availability and accessibility of the building, which is another key component for any new project for that funding. Next slide. Just a cutaway. So there's the existing arena. And your existing hall fits, well within the footprint of this big new expanded piece. So the idea was to maintain a lot of the existing sort of basic amenities and infrastructure and just grow the building in places where it really made sense. A brand new front entrance, nice and open, lots of glass so you could see things happening from the street and vice versa. Then you've got the multi-purpose court area here with, you can function it with a multi-use door, which can be pulled across. So you've got 2 large rooms. There's a second story part on the back. I'll talk about that. A couple of large multi-purpose rooms at the back. And then on the second level, which we could, it's improvements back here with respect to the arena function more than anything. And I think we left the kitchen, or we improved the kitchen function right here. If we go to the next slide, on the second floor cutaway, you can see what was proposed here was an elevated running, walking exercise track, which I've seen used in a couple of locations where I'm at down in Durham region. And these are really successful places to bring people in because it can be used as just simply a walking track. And that doesn't have to be for athletics, it could be just for exercise and for group activities like that. And of course, because it's on a second level, there's a new elevator that is required for accessibility. So that is all parked in this area down below. It doesn't interfere too much with the existing lobby. And then there was some new boardrooms and meeting rooms located on the back side of the building. And of course, some washrooms and barrier-free accessible features that were going to be included up here as well. And then on to the next slide. It's the numbers, so they're suitably blurry. So these we had to include as part of our programming for the funding application, some ideas about cost. So round numbers using at the time building costs per square foot and including some of the major spaces. And by the way, we were adding about 1,200 meters, which is roughly 14,000 square feet. overall on those two levels. We were talking, just round things a bit, we're talking in the neighborhood of about $8 million for the building additions. You got to pay us apparently to do that work for you. So that adds into things plus some site works. And we ended up being just under $10 million. And I think the goal of the GICB package is that would fund 80% of those costs. They would be deemed as appropriate and suitable costs of the project, which should be reimbursed for. So that's sort of the scale, magnitude, dollar values we're talking about, just to put it in some context. And then if you go to the next slide, I'll talk about funding options. So the FCM has a series of funding options available to municipalities like yours for various building projects. And it's a wide array of things that go from monitoring things to a recommissioning grant, things like that. These are in my humble and not completely versed opinion. I'm not an expert on the funding packages, but I know that we did some work on determining where some of those are. And so I'm just outlining these. There's 6 in total, I think, from FCM. They don't have right now, I think timelines are very loose. I think you have up to on an annual basis, you can apply for any of these programs. But they're not large dollar values. Generally, they're in the 50, 60 something $1,000 range. So they don't come close to dealing with what you want to do for the arena as a whole. If you go to the next one, and I can make these available to Manny and Sam or whoever with the links. So you can do some legwork on this yourself if you want to do some searching. And then there's GHG stuff, which I know there's a big interest in that locally. So there are funding plans for feasibility studies and what they call pathways to find your way into greenhouse gas reductions and different programs to fund the necessary reporting and investigations you might want to do to find out where you can build that into your programming for capital expenditures over the next few years. And then the last one on this page is the big daddy. So, one more. That's the one we were targeting, I think. And because we know there's a second intake coming, I think our plan is to have some more discussions with Manny and company about how we can position what we've already done and perhaps enhance it enough to make it a more sellable project that would receive the funding to get the project happening. So we don't have specific dates yet. We do know that it is coming sometime in the balance of 2022. We're keeping an eye on the website to find out when that's going to happen. And we've got a very good start on the project so far. And I think it just may require, to be honest with you, maybe some additional investment. So that we can move the project forward, move the needle, as they say, to make it more believable as a shovel-ready project. And I think that's the ticket here. So I can't imagine for 1 minute that it's not for want to get the expansion to the arena approved by the federal government. I mean, the case we made in the application, I think, was very sound and robust about it hitting all the right buttons, but I think it was its lack of advancement that really hurt us. There were other projects in the first intake that I think were clearly much more advanced in detailed design and almost ready to be tendered. And we're a little ways away from that. So that's my presentation. Last slide is just if there are any questions.
Thank you, Lawrence. Questions then from members of council? Councilor Douglas.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Lawrence, just, if the next stream is coming in a few months, do you have enough time to advance it far enough, do you think, to make a difference? Like it still won't be shovel ready, like you want to have permit drawings yet, or where do you think you can get to?
Well, given how far we got in a few short weeks, I think we've got resources. SEMA is a very well-resourced company. We have in the offices I work at, where this project was born, in the Toronto area, we have close to 70 people in our building group. So we have resources ready at the drop of the flag to get going. And I think, as you say, it'd still be a very fast-paced project. wouldn't follow the norm, but we could produce a fair bit of stuff in a couple of months' time.
Other questions? Lawrence, you did mention about an investment from the township to further this along. How much you thinking? Realistically,
Well, let me answer that with a sort of a circular point. So normally in a building project like this, you look at consulting fees as a function of the cost of the building. And the consulting fees, round number for a renovation like this might be, let's just say 10% of the cost of the construction. So if we're at $8 million in construction, we're looking at 800 grand in fees. The design piece of that is probably 20%, maybe 30 to get it to a place where it's a little more developed. So far, we haven't done it and we've done none of that yet. So that's the number, 30% of, what did I say? 800,000. Now, we could have some discussions, of course, about how SEMA can help with that project, knowing full well that if the funding, it's good for us. If the funding comes through, Manny's going to call me, right? Say, get going. So that's the idea. We be willing. I know I can't speak entirely for my senior management, but I know my senior VP is very behind this. So I think there could be some arrangement made.
it's good to hear there could be some arrangement made because 30% of the cost is quite large for a small municipality like ours. We're talking 800,000 million bucks, quite large for hope and a dream. The cost of the building when you did it was roughly, it's going to be about $10 million. Do you see that going higher now with the cost of construction materials?
Generally, yes. Even without all the stuff we hear about on a daily basis about the supply chain, as that I think evens out over the next little bit of time, there's normal increases in construction costs year over year, but normally those are trackable in somewhere less than 10%. And right now things are starting to even back down a bit. So lumber, for instance, is 40% off its high that it was at when we did the pricing for this thing. So things like that, I think, are a little volatile right now, but the numbers are getting better. But yeah, there will be some increases. If this doesn't happen until 2023, 2024, yeah, there'll have to be some escalation accommodation.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? I know that Manny and I had a conversation with our MP, John Nader, a week and a half ago. We sat with him and chatted about this situation where small municipalities are being asked to put out a lot of funding in order to receive more funding on a project, which is very difficult for small municipalities to do, much easier for larger cities. So it's we put the point forward to Mr. Nader that this is something that's got to be taken back by him to the federal government, that this is not a fair process for small communities. So we're hoping that goes forward. Anything else from council? Thank you so much for coming and having this chat with us and giving us that update. Thank you. I have here resolution 7.1 moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Douglas, that the Township of Mapleton Council receive for information the delegation of SEMA Plus Lawrence Cudlip regarding green and inclusive community buildings program funding. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Have a good evening. Next on the agenda, we do have Darling International Canada Limited, Duff Moore, Director for the Darling Ingredients. I can't remember anymore. It keeps changing, Duff. Thank you. Informally, all right. We have many names for the Rossay plant, yes. They call, we'll keep that aside. Please take the podium, Duff, and welcome. Duff is a local resident here and of course has a good and a busy job over at the Rossay plant.
So I'm not sure on the process, how you want this to work. First of all, I do want to offer my apologies for last month's meeting. Some family health issues came up. I joined the meeting thinking it was online and I went, I'm not going to make it because I'm an hour away, and I apologize for that. I also want to formally thank the council, township for the support through this appeal process, which was about $1 million of investment in legal fees and about a year of my time. But we got to a resolution where both the company and the Ministry of Environment and Conservation Parks have a much better understanding and support for agribusiness through this process. So, so I can either walk you through it, or you can open it up to questions or walk through. Okay. So is everybody versed on the appeal, why it happened or not, or do you want me to give you a little history? Okay. So in 2020, Darling proposed to put in and upgrade its poultry processing system to keep pace with agribusiness growth in the poultry industry, which was at the time is projected and forecasted to grow 2 to 3% year over year. So the proposal was to put in a better improved processing system that would allow us to move from about 14 metric tons an hour of poultry processed to about 23 metric tons an hour of poultry. In 8 years, that would then be exceeded the capacity if the industry continued to grow. We followed the process, which is a requirement through an ECA, which is an environmental compliance approval. Essentially, it's your ticket to operate and the conditions under which you must operate. There's a pre-consultation, a stakeholder meeting. We included the Ministry of Conservation and Park, and I'll use MECP because that's my slang. I go into that one. And we brought them into the facility. We've had a presentation. We explained all the benefits of the capacity increase. And many of those benefits were to process material faster, before it degrades, before it becomes odorous, while it still produces a high quality product, and it's an environmental benefit for the community. Then the process moves forward. We submit the application for amendment. They review it. And in the middle of the summer, the engineers come back and put some guidelines around it, which follow stated as general practices in Ontario for odor management, but there is no policy in Ontario for odor management. Get to that a little later. One of those criteria essentially would have forced the facility to run in the day that the ECA was submitted and put in place, we would be constantly running at a risk of infraction and non-compliance. Darling, as a responsible company, doesn't want to run in non-compliance. The legal liabilities for us were huge. We exhausted all avenues to discuss with the Ministry of Environment. We talked to the MPPs, we involved the townships. We tried to come to a settlement with them outside of a legal appeal and to no avail. So at the last, basically within the 15 days we had from them issuing us the ECA, we had to file an appeal to, at the time, went to the Environmental Review Tribunal. Since then, the Environmental Review Tribunal has been folded into the Ontario Land Tribunal under one body in Ontario, and we followed the appeal process for that. To try to make things a lot shorter, there was about 6 items that were under appeal. We settled 4 of them very quickly through discussions outside of the hearing setting. Once you're in an appeal, all of those conditions had to go through the OLT board, though, to be approved and make sure that they were meeting community requirements and your environmental stewardship, and they were. The last 2 items were kind of red lines for both the company in terms of operating non-compliance and for the ministry. And frankly, we finally got down to, we told the lawyers to go away. We got on a call with the ministry and we walked through the purpose of the project, the benefits again. We explained in blunt languages where this was going to help. Some of the issues that the ministry had, we agreed with, but their solution wasn't going to fix it. So we never had any challenge with the ministry's purpose of improving the community and protecting the community. We just didn't believe what they were enforcing was going to improve it. And out of that discussion, we came to a settlement, which essentially is exactly the same settlement that we proposed, the conditions I proposed before we had to go to the appeal. So $1 million later, but we didn't have to go to the court. We didn't have to put it in front of a tribunal that really doesn't have a lot of environmental knowledge. And we come to an agreement that both the Ministry of Environment has a better understanding. They're happy with the amendment or the appeal and issued us a new ECA. And we're basically, most of the things that were in the ECA, we were in progress of doing anyways. So the requirements, so one of the document from the OLT's decision states the tribunal finds, based on the evidence before it, the amended ECA with the proposed agreed upon changes satisfies the statutory requirements in the EPA, Environmental Protection Act, and is in the public interest. The proposed changes provide for an up-to-date and comprehensive instrument that will ensure monitoring of odor emissions and continual improvement of odor mitigation efforts at the plant, while through the Community Liaison Committee and reporting to the MECP, oversight is provided. The tribunal finds that these measures will ensure environmental protection and consistency with the EPA's purpose and provisions. So a couple of the things that the amended ECA, it really doesn't add anything new. It just adds some strengthened language to it. The big issue was a one odor unit limit was being imposed on the facility. And I don't know if I've taken you through this or not. A one odor limit, one odor unit is 10 people in a controlled atmosphere room with no other odors, no other smells in a laboratory setting. 5 think something changed within the air. 5 notice no difference. There's no detection of odor. There's no I like, I don't like. That's one odor unit. Grass cutting, house to house, 20 to 30 odor units. Odors off a marsh, quite frankly, sometimes 50 to 100 odor units. It's an extremely tight limit. And the science behind measuring it, I guess the example I would give, if you were driving a car at 50 in a 50 kilometer or 50 mile an hour zone or 50 kilometer zone, and you were pulled over by the cop for doing 51. And basically the cops or the police officer's radar detector was only calibrated to plus or minus 10. You could have been doing 41 or 61, but the average says you were doing 51 and you're convicted. The science behind odor measurement is not accurate enough to go to a one odor unit limit. So our argument was, we're working towards one odor unit. We've been measured at times. We do an annual source test that at times we've been at 1.9. We're close in the ballpark. The technology and the capital to get to 1, I don't know if it exists. That's part of the report asked us to do a technology benchmarking report for best in class worldwide technologies to help us get there. I will tell you that one of our expert witnesses is an expert in odor management and odor measurement. And the ministry themselves, while they challenged him as an expert to appear for us, have hired him as a consultant to put together best practices in odor management. He is going to use the Moorfield facility as a model for that document. So we are doing the best we can right now. As I talked to Councillor Craven, it's a long time coming, but you know, as a guy that's joined the company at some bad times when I was at Darling, we put in the biofilter, we put in the wastewater treatment. We've done the same at Moorfield. Darling is committed to investment, and we presented to the ministry. We've spent $90 million at the Moorfield facility in environmental improvements since 2014. So we're happy that we've reached appeal. There's a technology benchmarking report, which is an enhancement of what we already had, which is an odor management plan. It just gives it a little more teeth. We were asked to comply to all of our units being tarped. All of our units are tarped except for our fallen stock trucks or our dead stock trucks, because there's a CFIA regulation around the driver not being able to get out and manipulate the tarp when he's at the farm for biosecurity, for AI, for ASF. So we have developed a system that seems to be working on a trial truck, and we committed to the ministry that by the end of this year, that trial, if it was working, we would have them in place, and happy to present that the capital has been approved and the design has been approved. We've got 1 truck on the road, 1's in the garage, and all the materials have been ordered to finish the other 8 trucks. So that's kind of the gist of, but I do want to say, you know, the council's, the township support, we had the support of the OWMA, and they were very, very interested in it. The ministry, and again, the ministry was good once we were removed from the political bureaucratic and able to talk about what is needed. And we were able to get a resolution, and I can go back to doing my regular job.
Thanks, Duff. That's a good overview. And then I can tell you that I'm glad you've got that resolution, because when I was online, it seemed like the ministry had their heels in the ground and they weren't going to budge. So I'm glad that we're able to take some of that legal away and come to a good resolution. And I know part of that discussion was about the trucks sitting idling and the odors coming from the trucks, not the plant itself. So
Yeah, if you don't mind, that's a really good point, is that the model, we are required as part of our ECA to do annual source testing each year. And it models every emission source from our facility, puts it in a model, and it predicts based on weather patterns. There's a huge scientific process that ministry approves. They have to approve of the plan, and it dictates what is the odor unit forecasted to be at the most sensitive receptor in the village of Rothsay. That model does not include is trucks driving through the community to get to the site. I'm not sure how we prevent that. So at the same time that this appeal was going on, COVID was happening, and the China border for pork products was occurring. So literally overnight, Rothsay's pork volumes went up by 30%. The poultry volumes went up by 15%. So we were operating outside of capacity, but with where does that material go? It either comes to our facility or it shuts down the slaughter and meat facilities with Ontario, because there is no options for that material outside of the rendering industry.
and that is a good point, Duff, that even with the landfilling, that very few landfills are will or
Very
able
few
to take it.
mandated that are
That
approved to take it.
have the approval to take it.
Yeah.
And any of those that do, with the landfill capacity in Ontario being at a desperate situation as it is now, they don't want it.
So on the landfill part of it, we did research that. It was part of our appeal process. The two landfills in Ontario that would accept some of that material on a case by case, you phone us when and plan a couple days in advance. Well, that's not when the material needs to be diverted. It needs to be diverted when the plant can't process it that day. So.
Questions from council members to Mr. Moore? Council Craven?
All I can say is hallelujah. 2 years ago, last Christmas, I was teaching at the Rothsay School. It was the first I came in contact with the smell. I was born and raised on a farm, used to all kinds of bad smells, but there was nothing like the smell that came out of that Rothsay plant. The people in Rothsay, I just felt so sorry for them that it's just good that this is coming to fruition, that we're going to get some good air for those people over there.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Craven. And I think that Mr. Moore pointed out, since 2014, $90 million spent by the company to improve that odor. That's an incredible amount of money to make sure that the community of Rothsay, the people that live there, are not having the situation they did when I was a young boy going through there and you held your nose. So Councilor Martin.
Thank you. It's more of a personal interest, I guess. So if we're going back to the 80s, right, the smell that kind of like, I grew up in Owen Sound, but I knew what the Rothsay smell was, right? Like it plastered you against the backseat of your dad's Torino, right, coming through Rothsay. What would the rough projections be for an odor limit, back in the 80s? Like what kind of number do you think we'd be talking?
What the company was putting out, admitting at the time. I can go back to 2001, 2001, when the ministry there's some significant complaints, and rightly so, coming, and Maple Leaf had taken over, and we're determining what all needs to be done, and then saw the bill, because there's nothing cheap at this facility to fix. Technologies actually weren't necessarily in place either, but the odor measurements at that point were 13, 14 to the close receptor. I think the point that needs to be made clear is that back 32 years ago, that was the high intensity. When you cook the material, there's a couple odors, and one of them is called the high intensity odors that comes off the cooking process itself. That now goes through a series of scrubbers. The equipment itself has direct capture. It goes through 2 phases of scrubbers, and then from the scrubbers goes through a biological odor treatment. In the past, some of those high intensity odors were not captured, period. And that was the smell that you can't wash off. The worst smells now are overcapacity raw material that degrades. And some of that comes through the community to get to the facility. And the other is we now have the truck storage building. When we were 30% extra volume, we couldn't contain it. So part of we'll be looking at, do we build a bigger building? How big of a building? Do you put a tent over the site? You still have to get material to the site. So those are all questions, but at the year 2000, you were putting about 15 odor units average. There'd be peak times worse than that.
Thank you. Good question. It makes a difference.
So just one follow-up about the public liaison committee. Obviously, it's not in place yet. Oh, it is in place. So who would compose, like, I see the parameters here that are around it, but what kind of, numbers are we talking, or how many people are involved in that?
So have been the lead of all the meetings so far, and we've had 5 meetings today, 5 or 6, I think. So we're having it every 4 months. There's 6 community members that we sent letters to every community within I think it was a 1 kilometer radius of the plant facility. Every house that was there, open suggestion. We didn't reject a single person. We had 6 applicants, and 6 applicants sit on the committee, and we meet and it's open to we take them through every odor complaint we receive, whether it's been verified or not. We discuss it. Public liaison committee has been, I'm going to say, very good, very genuine, transparently. If there's something going on, we're actually give them a tour at the end of this month. They're going to come on site. We'll give them a full tour of the facility. Those are one of those things that, was it forced by the ministry? Yes. Was it a good force? Thank you. Thank you, ministry. This is something that we should have done, taken a step on our own. But 6 community members that have lived there. A couple of them are different generations. So one family and their sons or daughters are on the committee as well. So.
Perfect. Thank you. Other questions from council? Thank you very much, Duff, for keeping us up to date on what was taking place. And I just commend you for the work that you did for the local business as well as the local community members that work in that business. So thank you.
Thank you.
I have a resolution here moved by Councillor Douglas, second by Councillor Ottens, that Township of Mapleton Council receive for information a delegation of Darling International Canada Limited, Duff Moore, regarding their recent Ontario Land Tribunal proceeding and decision. All those in favor? That's carried. Minutes from committees, item 8.1. We do have the minutes there from the Mapleton Parks and Recreation Committee. I have a movement here by Councillor Douglas, second by Councillor Ottens, that Township of Mapleton Council receive for information the draft minutes of the Mapleton Parks and Recreation Committee meeting convened on June 16th, 2022. Any questions on those meeting minutes from council? Councillor Martin?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just a quick question about, so the outdoor rink at the PMD, should we be obviously it was created during COVID. Well, arguably we're still in COVID. In the early days of COVID, right, to make sure that people had a spot for some recreation. It seems to have morphed, lights going up now, like more investments in the rink. I'm sure a concrete pad or something will come in the near future or be proposed. Is further investment in an outdoor rink something that we want? Could we maybe, it's free, right? Maybe we open up the arena to ice times when it's not being used and have free skatings or something like that. I just wonder if that's something we should really look at instead of, normally outdoor rinks are a labor of love, very time intensive. I've refused to have one for that exact reason, because we walk down to the Optimist rink and it's beautiful and they're doing wonderful things down there. But if we're paying people to maintain it, I just wonder if that's something we should have a discussion about, if that's something moving forward that's in our long-term plans to have an outdoor rink there. I know it's well used at times, that there are members of the public that certainly enjoy it. But maybe we could get that same enjoyment in the indoor rink when it's not being utilized, make sure we're getting max utilization of that indoor rink instead of a couple of months of the outdoor. So I was just wondering if that's something maybe we should talk about.
So are you worried about the cost of this rink getting out of hand or just having it altogether? Like, I'm just trying to understand what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever really had a full costing of what this outdoor rink costs the community. When we have an indoor rink 100 feet away, that's not always being utilized. During the week or whatever, right? Those non-prime times. An outdoor rink is so weather dependent. Like there's so many factors that go into whether it actually can be used or not used. Any given winter has good, a lot of good days versus not so many days. If we're gonna keep putting extra resources and money into an outdoor rink, I don't know, I just wonder if it wouldn't be a conversation to be had.
So absolutely, we can have that conversation, and you want to do it now, we can have that conversation now, or you want to do it another time? What's a council conversation, right? Well, I know that that Mr. Matina, he had costs in the past, he gave costs to council when we first started, when we first built that, the cost of the gravel and the work put in there, it wasn't over the cost. Do you remember those numbers, Mr. Matina? Off chance?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. If memory serves me, I think I remember about $6,000. And that cost is in there, and it's a one-time cost because the materials are in. So now it's just a matter of, the boards have been installed, it's been all regraded. We've got some lighting costs now, but pretty well from the future will be just creating the ice and just keeping it usable. But all the structural costs are in.
And the staff are already in place at the arena that actually work and do that, so they're already getting, there's no extra cost for staffing to do the outdoor rink and the indoor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Well, it is a little labor intensive, as Councillor Martin suggested. But staff is already on duty, and we do have incidental snow removal costs that are in addition to normal costs. But I would say, if you're going to weigh that against the popularity of the rink, they're minimal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it is very popular, as you pointed out, Councillor Martin. A lot of people use the Moorfield one. We had this discussion as well at Coffee with Council this past week. Where they're talking about building a new rink in the park there, but they want to refrigerate it because you don't know from one winter to another how many ice days you're going to have. And I think that was one of the thoughts of changing the rink there. I think this past winter, we had quite a few ice days where people were using. And it's also usable when there's figure skating or hockey or other events going on the ice rink. The outdoor rink is always available. So what do other council members think? Thoughts? Councillor Douglas.
Well, I think with the presentation we just had with Lawrence, depending on what happens with that grant down the road, that will displace the rink anyway. And then we'll have to, come up with a longer term solution with what to do with it or regrade it and whatnot. So, well, I guess we have to see what happens with that as well.
It's also a good point. Thank you. Councillor Ottens.
Yeah, I was having the same thoughts, but that'll be a number of years away. I do think a community the size of Drayton can warrants having an outdoor rink. If Moorfield and Alma can have one for their much smaller populations, I think a town of Drayton size and it's growing. I think it's a good idea. I think now with more COVID restrictions gone next winter, the indoor surface will probably be booked even more. So then that gives the people who aren't on the indoor ice an opportunity to skate somewhere whenever it suits. So, and lighting seems a good idea because it does get dark so early in the winter that it's nice that they can skate in the evening. And I do know some people that they just don't like skating inside, like not that we have to be so precious to pander to everything, but skating outside is a whole different field than skating indoors.
Councillor Craven, do you have a thought on this?
Yeah, I agree. I think we have to be careful with how much money we spend on this right now because of what's coming down the road. And we're also asking people to pay for this water tower and raising the water rates. So we have to be a little bit careful about how much we ask people for money for. And I'm just a little cautious on the money that's being looked at.
Yeah, I don't think we're spending much more money. What's the lights costing for us? We're gonna put, are they installed now or are they gonna be installed?
The lights are being installed. Actually, they're already up, I believe.
And the cost?
I don't have a handle on the costs at this point.
So that doesn't look like there's gonna be any more future costs. The light's already in place and the gravel's in place and it's just a matter of reducing or removing snow sometimes if we get a heavy snowfall coming up would be the difficulty. You know, when COVID first hit, as you mentioned, we had to close the arenas and it was a great solution that a lot of the community members picked up on. I know when I go by that ice rink, it's got people on it, no matter what time I go there. And the idea of the lights came because a lot of people wanted to use it and they were just having their cars sit there with the lights on so they could still skate out there. So I agree with you, Councilor Martin. I don't think we should go doing concrete pads and boards and getting any further along than we are right now. But being that the lights are already up, my suggestion would be continue on what we have and wait to see what the next 4 or 5 years takes. Councilor Craven?
Maybe we should hope we get lucky like the Optimist Club in Newfield did get a benefactor such as they have.
You know what, as Councilor Martin pointed out once before, a double rink would be nice, maybe an indoor and an outdoor. We just have to put the refrigeration in the ground. We have the electricity. Maybe when we do an upgrade, we can figure that. Any further comments and questions on this topic? Go ahead, Councilor Martin.
Yeah, maybe just like a follow-up to like, so Marlene's point is, you know, not irrelevant and that Drayton can support it, right? But the difference between Alma and Moorfield and Drayton is that Moorfield and Alma are volunteer club run, right? In Drayton, we pay for it, right? Whether people are being paid anyway or not, the allocation should go to, it costs this much amount of money to maintain the rink, right? It's popular, like and you're right, it's outdoor feel is way different than an indoor. I wonder if we wouldn't be a little bit embarrassed to know about our utilization rate of the indoor rink, which is so close. And I'd love to see it being used, even if it's free, right? Because the outdoor rink's free. Even if we're opening the doors and saying like, hey, these are off hours, like moms and tots, you know, runs during the week, whatever, seniors, like open it up, just get it used, right? We're turning the lights on. That's our cost, right? Like it's all right there.
So maybe that's a further discussion about when we have these open ice times, then we're charging people $1 or $2 to go. Just why bother? Just remove the fees. So maybe that's a suggestion of a topic we should talk about when it comes down to the budget time, and to see if, you know, as we did with, you know, our service groups, not charging them for using the facilities. The community is already paying for a facility and to offer free ice time when it's a free skate. You know, I think that's a good idea as well. So we can have that topic. Councillor Ottens.
Following up on that, since the Moorfield and the Alma ones are being maintained by volunteers, group service clubs, perhaps we could approach the Kinsmen if they wanted to maintain the Drayton one, if that's something that was in their wheelhouse of volunteerism. It's just a thought. They're the Drayton Service Club, right? If that's something they might want to do. If cost of maintenance is an objective here.
Well, they're not the only service club in Drayton, but themselves and the Cadets and the Rotary clubs.
Right.
Through your worship, I think it's quite easy to maintain once the ice is in, because the Zamboni, I think, just goes, scrapes the ice and comes out, comes in. So, I mean, once it's up and built, it's fairly easy. The one thought that comes through my mind is what level of programming would council like to see? Because there's some folks that enjoy. If it's open, they go skate. But there's some folks that were saying, why can't we have pickup at this time, public skating at this time? You know, I don't know, long shots at this time, you know, and that does to also take time. So what level of programming does council expect for that outdoor rink? I think is a question that we likely should discuss as well.
So for the outdoor rink, that's a topic, you're right. We've dealt with that in the past winter. People were asking for different things at different times, just like they do in the indoor rink when we had stick and puck indoor and then some, you know, children didn't want to play stick and puck with the older children. So yeah, the outdoor rink, do we want to have some scheduled activities there that would go through our manager of recreation to schedule certain activities outside? That might be a good idea as well, and certain, you know, activities, and maybe Ms. Gross could chime in.
Sure, through you, Mayor. My recommendation off the top of my head at this point would be that we could look at doing some fun days, really getting some activities and events going on out there. But to have something consistent competing with what's happening with the indoor rink might not work out so well. So we would really want to watch the scheduling on that and how we're going to monitor that. We certainly could look at offering some more programming up there and events, that type of thing. But to have a consistent, specific time for certain things might conflict with the indoor arena activities, but it's not something we could certainly investigate what that would look like.
Councilor Craven?
Yeah, you have to be careful that your 15-year-olds aren't out there with sticks and pucks. Your moms and tots are trying to skate. You gotta be careful of stuff like that. So scheduling would have to work. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's certainly something that, you know, we ran across last winter, both Manny and I, about the outdoor rink. So probably Sam as well, getting some of those calls and emails. Other thoughts from council members then on this? Go ahead.
I totally took us down this rabbit hole, so I apologize. It wasn't really my, like, the best part about an outdoor rink is that it's a free for all, right? So like you get there first, you get to decide what level of programming happens, right? I'd hate to have too much structure out there, right? Because the old Canadiana thing, like outdoor, like, so mom and tot come out and there's a hockey game underway. Maybe you're gonna hold off for a half hour until the hockey game winds down. Mom and tots are out there, hockey players come, you give them their space and you let them skate for a bit before you engage, right? Like I'd hate to put too much structure out there, to be honest. And I'm not sure, did we ban sticks and pucks out there last winter? Was there an issue on, no, there was no issue with that, so it's,
But we didn't ban it.
okay. It's like, you'd hate for that to happen, right? Because kids, sticks, pucks are a thing on an outdoor rink too, right? If we're gonna have it, like, I don't know, too much structure gets clunky. Not to sound too conservative here.
You're a pond hockey player, I can tell. I would like to see, Amy, maybe those programming you were thinking of, like certain days and different events. I think that's a great idea for the outdoor rink.
Yeah, no, that sounds perfect. We can look at offering that. And I agree with Councillor Martin. The kids just love it. We've been up there lots of times over the winter and I've seen the older kids even move over to half the ice so that the younger kids can have it. They really do play well together typically. So it's great to see that happen and we want to encourage that on the outdoor rink.
Thank you. Anything else on that topic or the report from the committee? Councillor Ottens?
Yes, through you, Mayor, just to draw attention to the, which we already know, but the Rotary event this Saturday, the grand opening of the park and the Rotary Club 75th anniversary. So I believe the big ribbon cutting's at 2:00 and then the party at the arena. So that was a big thing that's been a long time in the works. So I think their Rotary Club's hoping to have a good turnout for that. And we just had a Parks and Rec meeting right before this meeting here and discussed the upcoming 50/50 applications. And there's a few good ones in there again. So it's nice to see that the service clubs are all And the different community groups are all planning more things, more expansions, more work. So that's a positive thing too.
Thank you, Councillor Otten. So yes, the Rotary Club 75th anniversary, 2:00 would be the ribbon cutting and the opening of the Rotary Park at the end of Queen Street in Drayton. And then at 3:00, everything moves up to the PMD Arena where they have dog shows, balloons, street vendors, other great events, hot dog eating contest. I think, Mr. Martin, I think I put your name down to be in that hot dog eating contest. See how many you can eat. So there's a lot of great community partners that have come together for this event. And I know the fire department will be there as well for the street dance part and with the live band in the evening time. So it'll be a great evening of events there. And of course, there is the Rotary dinner and it's almost at capacity now, I found out today. So it's good to see that happening in the community. So if there's nothing else, we do have moved by Councillor Douglas, second by Councillor Craven, that the Township of Mapleton Council receive for information the draft minutes of the Mapleton Parks and Recreation Committee convened on June 16th, 2022. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Reports from staff. Item 9.1.1, moved by Councillor Douglas, second by Councillor Ottens, that Township of Mapleton Council received Building Department Report BD 2022-09 dated July 12th, 2022 regarding the June month end and year to date. Any questions from council on that report? Councillor Craven.
I noticed the building permits for June this year are down considerable from last year. If you look at the value, it's pretty much the same. That's good.
Thank you. Yes. Anything else from council? All those in favor? That's carried. Next, we have 9.21, moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Douglas, that council received CAO report CL 2022-14 regarding the renewal of canine control and shelter agreement for information, and that council approved the agreement with highlighted changes and direct the clerk to finalize the agreement with Callie Foster. Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Worship. So just the renewal, and we met briefly, obviously with all the costs rising for everybody. Also affects Callie, and if you frequent Facebook at any moment of any time, you would see that there's lost dogs everywhere in Mapleton. So it's a very important program and person to have in place. She's doing a great job. It's just an ask to see if we can renegotiate for moving forward. We did ask that there's automatic renewals in place so that we don't have to come back to council until either party decides that we don't want to work together, but I don't see that happening. So just plain and simple, just a renewal with a little bit of an increase. Hopefully council considers it.
Thank you, Mr. Barron. Questions then from members of council on this report? Councilor Douglas.
With the, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, with the increase in the monthly rate, which works out to about 25%, are we still achieving full cost recovery through the canine control?
Great question, and no. And I will be coming back with another report to council on this. A while back, we went to lifetime tags, and we were getting about per year 1,800 to 1,900 folks renewing their tags. From the moment we went to lifetime to now, well, I know the reason, because it's lifetime, not everybody's coming back. And we're down to about 400 to 500 renewals. So right now we're at a disadvantage. So we will be coming back to council to go back to the annual fees. And we're going to have to come up with a program that encourages dog owners to do the right thing and pay for their tag. So I just haven't had a chance. It's on the radar. I haven't had a chance to write the report just yet. But at this moment in time, no, I can't say that we are.
Thank you, Mr. Barron. It's a good explanation of that. And we look forward to the next report which is talking about those dog tags. I know we've had that conversation about it. Councilor Martin?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Manny, the monthly call reports, do they come in? Not that they have to come obviously to council, but like is somebody receiving those monthly call reports that are stipulated in the contract? Just like calls for service and, kind of activity reports, I'm assuming.
Through your worship, I can honestly say I haven't seen them, but I've only been, I guess, involved in this part of the business for a couple of weeks now. We'll make sure that we continue to receive them.
Thank you. Further questions? All right, there's no further questions then. Call the question on this. All those in favor? That's all carried. Thank you. Next, we have item 9.2.2, moved by Councilor Martin, second by Councilor Craven, that the CAO report CL 2022-15 dated July 12th, 2022, regarding the shared service agreement with Guelph Aramosa Township be received for information, and that council direct the mayor and clerk to execute the agreement on behalf of the Township of Mapleton. Mr. Barron.
So in keeping in line with the direction from council to staff to try to find efficiencies and savings, we every other week we have CAO calls amongst the 7 municipalities. And we asked whether somebody would be or one of the municipalities would be interested in sharing services. And it turns out that Guelph Aramosa was interested. So we had a few meetings and some negotiations, and it was finally agreed that both municipalities, of course, with the approval of council, if council were to approve, would we be able to move forward with one CBO for 2 municipalities? Met with the Guelph Aramosa CBO, and it turns out that it's a win-win for both municipalities. There's cost savings, certainly some cost savings from Mapleton to the tune of just under 70,000. And I guess being in a position that we've been in for the last month or so, it also encouraged us quickly to find efficiencies with cloud permit and things like that. So all those things that we're implementing in a very short time frame allows us to be able to share a CBO and offer great service to both municipalities at a fairly deep discount to both municipalities as well. So, I will say I'm truly excited if approved to get this going, and I think Guelph Aramosa is as well.
Thank you. Questions then from members of council to Mr. Barron? Councilor Rottens.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor. So is cloud permit already being used, or when will that begin?
We're in the training stages right now, so I anticipate about another 4 weeks or so, we'd probably go live with cloud permit, barring any circumstances out of our control, but it's kind of a 6 to 8 week implementation. Yeah. 60% of small municipalities across Ontario use it. Guelph Aramosa uses it, and various municipalities within the county use it as well. The bigger municipalities use a different system, but when we phoned around to other municipalities and other CBOs that we've known in building departments from small municipalities, they're all very familiar with, and most of them use cloud permit.
Thank you. Other questions, Mr. Barron? May I just like to thank you for being on this and looking for not only the efficiencies, but a way we can move our building department forward in a rather very short time. We're saving just under $70,000 a year, as you pointed out, which is fantastic. The efficiencies of using cloud permit is going to make it easier for all of our residents. And I know that, we probably could have this years ago, but we haven't, but now we're going to have that. So it's good that our township is moving forward with technology as not only this, but as we see with the programming that Amy's going to be using with booking facilities. We're getting there, and it's good to see that we're getting there. And I just want to thank you for your leadership in this. Any further questions? Sorry, go ahead.
I must admit, I'm only a small part of that. Certainly, Hope and Janet and the team literally took the heavy lifting on that one and made all this happen. So just wanted to mention them for sure.
Thank you. Very important to me for that team because they've been working really hard. And now that Mike has also left, they're picking up the slack right now. And so team is doing really well. Councilor Ottens?
Yes, just one more follow-up. Is this agreement going to be reviewed annually? Just to see how it's working, or how often would we look at that to see if it'd be renewed or not?
Yeah, just like everything else, yeah, you know, if it works well, then the appetite to review maybe sometimes isn't there. But certainly we will, there's going to be some learning experiences that we probably, there's going to be opportunities and challenges, of course, but absolutely, we'll review one at a time. Maybe it could be sooner than a year or, you know.
And we see partnerships like this happening more and more often. You know, it started out, we looked a few years back and Minto and Wellington North went with a partnership with a fire chief. Center Wellington and Pushlands just went and did the same thing. And now we're looking at a partnership that we're for this here for us to do with Guelph Armasa on a building for the building department. So I think that's one way we're going to find efficiencies for every municipality in the area going forward. Anything further? All those in favor then? That's carried. Next, we have item 9.2.3, moved by Councillor Craven, second by Councillor Martin, that the council receives CAO report CL 2022-16 dated July 12th, 2022 regarding development charges background study for information, and that council directs staff to work closely with Hemson Consulting Limited to ensure the study is completed in the most diligent manner so that we properly recover all growth-related expenses. Mr. Barron.
Thank you, through your worship. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but prices are increasing a little bit, basically on everything we're touching. So in talking with Sam and the rest of the team, we felt that we just couldn't wait any longer to redo a development charges study. We were, you know, essentially going to wait till the water and wastewater master plan is complete, but in order for us to be ready, in my opinion, for January 1st budget, we need a new study that captures, you know, the new growth parameters. You know, just for instance, the fire trucks and vehicles are coming in, you know, $200,000 over budget, and it's just without doing this, it's unfair to the existing ratepayers that they're burdened with more of the load that they should be. So yeah, it's a great exercise, and by the time they're done capturing the non-water and wastewater assets, will be done with the master plan, and we can include that, and we can move forward with an updated development charges study that really captures the growth and allows the growth to pay for the growth.
Thank you, Mr. Barron. And if council recalls, I think it was March or April of 2020 that we finalized the development charges we're currently under. But then, of course, it was COVID, and all the COVID pricing has skyrocketed things 30 and 40%. So we're seeing those increases. So although we did it not too long ago, with the new realities of costing, I think it's prudent that we do it again. Mr. Craven.
I certainly agree with Manny that it's very unfair for the old taxpayers to pay for the current increases in costs because of the development. And I've said that before when we did our development charges, that they should be high. I don't want to see them go higher and discourage in development, but 10 years ago, we had lots of water pressure rate and everything was fine. We wouldn't have needed the water tower if it had been for the new developments that have gone on. But they're only paying for a small share of the extra costs. The people that have lived here for quite a while are paying more than their share for that water tower, for instance. So I think we really need to have a look at our development charges.
Yeah, and it's not just about the water tower, Mr. Craven, it's about everything, all the infrastructure, right? So absolutely, when we're doing roads and bridges and sewers and viaducts and everything else, all of that has to be paid for. And we also, when we're doing this study, we also have to be very careful about housing cost. And this is something that I hope that's taken into consideration. Here we are with a housing crisis, and by adding development charges, that just increases that as well. So it's kind of a difficult situation that we're all in. And I look forward to seeing this new report from Henson Consulting. I think last time we had Watson Associates do it last time, so it's a different company doing it a couple of years later. So I look forward to seeing what the results of theirs is. Further comments and questions? Councillor Douglas.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question on the schedule that they have provided. It looks like it's wrapping up in April. Just wondering how that ties into the budgeting for next year.
We'll make sure that the schedule changes to what we want. And I shouldn't say that in that way, no matter, that's not fair. I understand that everybody's so busy, especially folks like Watson and Henson. However, there is a wiggle room, as explained by the fella. I think they're just being prudent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So one of the questions was when we did the development charges last, but 2020, like every time we touch development charges, we got consulting fees of like $20,000-$30,000 to reevaluate it. What's the typical interval in between like, is there a standard, like industry standard? I know, like, obviously the last couple of years, things have changed dramatically, but like $30,000 is a little chunk of change to make up. Is that something we make up pretty easily with, if development charges increased dramatically? Or like, I guess my question really is, what's the regular interval? And then what's the benefit of cutting in early versus the consulting fees that are attached to it?
So in this case, I would agree. And and Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, from what I'm used to, the study's usually anywhere from 4 to 6 year intervals. However, with COVID and the unpredictable pricing, it's almost, it's a living, breathing document, in my opinion. Like the mayor said, we just did it for the water and wastewater portion, and we were still out, considerable amount of money because of the increase in construction costs. And I guess to the 30,000, I think we'd be well out of that money if we don't increase the development charges. We'd be at more of a disadvantage. So the interval, fair question, usually to me, 4 to 6 years in my experience, not yearly or every other year. So hopefully at some point, all this evens out and we'll be able to get back to the normal intervals.
Councillor Ottens?
Yes, through you, Mayor. How does this work with the election and the possible change in council members and trying to squeeze all this in before January 1st? Educating anybody about it all and the public meetings and everything?
I don't think anything changes if we approve tonight. Well, in fact, with all due respect, it's under my procurement limits, so we're moving forward. So really nothing changes, and just the end result would get presented to the new council as opposed to the current council.
Anything further? I'll call the question. All those in favor then? That's carried. And we're going to move on to 9.2.4. This is the one that was added today. This is moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Craven. That Township of Mapleton Council waive the notice requirement for today's council meeting to allow an addendum under heading 9, specifically item 9.2.4. All those in favor? Carried. So then we move on to this point here. Moved by Councillor Craven, second by Councillor Martin, that the Township of Mapleton Council receive for information clerk's report CL 2022-17 regarding Drayton Mapleton Agricultural Society's request for a noise bylaw exemption during the weekend of their agricultural fair, which is August 5th to 7th, 2022. And that Township of Mapleton Council specifically approve for the following hours: Friday, August 5th until 1 a.m. and Saturday, August 6th until 1 a.m. And further, that the applicant submit the following to the township. By July 29th, 2022, a $2 million certificate of insurance naming the corporation of the Township of Mapleton additionally insured. And by July 29th, 2022, confirmation in writing that the neighbors have been advised of the upcoming event and the hours of operation. So questions to the clerk on this one? Go ahead, Councilor Douglas.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just wondering if we've ever had any complaints or issues with noise from previous years with the fair.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, perhaps one of the counselors that's been a counselor for a while could best answer that. I'm of course aware that there has been, but perhaps Councillor Craven would know best.
No, I don't. I haven't heard of any complaints. I have heard that people are unhappy with it sometimes, but no official complaints came that I know of anyway. But like I say, I've heard people are unhappy with it. But same with me in Moorfield, when they have their cruise night or their car show night, the noise can go on till sometimes 2 o'clock in the morning, squealing the tires and so on. But it's something that happens and we just put up with it.
Councilor Martin?
It does need to end at 1 a.m. though. I know that was an issue last year, the year before, where it got a little. Sorry, ooh, okay, in a few years then, but 1 a.m. is a good time for it to end. I know it's a great time, right? But there's a neighborhood there too, so I think 1 a.m. is reasonable.
Yeah, 2019 is when we changed it to 1 a.m. because previously it was like 2 in the morning or something like that. Yeah. It was a little later, so we changed it to 1 a.m.
They had an issue with
Yeah. That's why it went long. Yeah, because yeah. The machine. All right, any further questions or comments then? I'll call the question. All those in favor of this? That's carried. Thank you. I was actually wondering, Mr. Clerk, when I was looking through the agenda, I didn't see that there. So I was like, I think they forgot. So I'm glad that we were able to put that in tonight. Moving on to 9.3.1, moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Craven. The Township of Mapleton Council received Public Works Report PW 2022-10 dated July 12th, 2022 regarding the request for additional capital funding for tender awards. And then council increased the 2022 capital funding value for project sheet 21046 from $200,000 to $260,000 to fund the reconstruction of Reed's Wood Road together with the Township of Woolwich in 2022. And that council increased the 2022 capital funding value for project sheet 2126 from $69,000 to $124,000 to fund the award of tender RFQ 2022-02 for the installation of guardrails on concession 5 in 2022. And further, that council authorized staff to withdraw required funds from the current capital budget reserve. Mr. Matina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to council. So this report speaks to a couple of capital projects that were recently tendered where, as everyone knows, the budget was set last year and staff put in their best effort, best budget estimates. However, supply chain issues and other market factors have come into play again. And the results have come in over the policy procedure where staff can approve without council's permission. So here we have a boundary road where we're sharing the cost of construction with Woolwich County. Oh, sorry. All right, I'll just work blind. The contract with Woolwich County, Woolwich Township, came in at 520,000. And it's half the cost for that one, so we're sharing that as a 50-50. So we're $60,000 short on that, where we had a $200,000 budget. And the other capital project was to replace some much needed guardrail, deficient guardrail on concession 5. And that one came in extraordinarily high. And basically, these costs can be attributed to high AC prices, high steel prices. There's a number of factors that come into play. So staff is asking for a total of $115,800 to fund these two projects. There's a risk if we delay the guardrail repairs, risk to the township because of the third-party exposure. And with respect to the Woolwich contract, they're going to proceed with the work. And should council not approve the increase, then staff would have to put that increase into the 2023 budget in order to pay Woolwich in 2023 for the work. So I've added to this report a number of communications that have been received from area construction associations, and there's one here actually from John Nader, the MP, to the federal government, asking them to supplement more infrastructure projects for townships, for all municipalities. So this report is basically asking for the funding that we had no control over that's occurred, and we anticipate that this is not the end of these issues with financing and tender results. So staff is recommending that council approve the additional funds.
Thank you, Ms. Martina, on that report. I have a quick question. Guardrails, and then you got guide wires instead of rails. And I don't know if you have this answer, and just wondering, in some communities, they have the rails, some communities have the wires. Is it cheaper to do the wires because there's less metal involved?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the wires are designed for less loads, less impacts. The steel is more robust for higher traffic roads or maybe higher truck volumes. But these wire guardrails that exist now that need to be replaced are not at the right height, and they've been there since probably since the road was built originally. So they're outdated and insufficient. So we are proposing steel guardrails for these projects.
Thank you, Ms. Martina. So questions of Ms. Martina about his report? Didn't mean to throw you under the bus there. I just was curious about that. Go ahead, Mr. Craven.
Through you to Sam. First of all, we're pretty much committed to that Reed Woods project. Secondly, I don't think we need to even think about not doing the guardrails, because if somebody went down into the bank because the guardrails broke or weren't there or were deficient, we'd be sued and we'd be sorry forever. The only other question I have then, Sam, is this, if we go ahead with these two projects with the increased cost, is this going to affect any other projects that you were planning on?
Ms. Martina.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Craven. No, my understanding in discussions with finance that there is money in the capital reserve to fund the shortfall.
Thank you, Ms. Martina. And Councillor Martin. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This section of the Reedswood Road, is this the one we talked about a couple weekends ago? Because I understand it's in pretty lousy shape. Like I was told, I think I got 2 phone calls in one day over it. Like you can't even ride a bicycle over that section of road. So the question I have through you to Mr. Martina is, what's the project schedule on Reedswood? Is it like this summer, this fall? Do you have an idea of?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Martin, the job has been tendered and has been awarded. The first construction meeting has occurred, and they are proceeding, just waiting on locates. So that's another problem with the industry today is lack of manpower and the ability to get construction locates in a timely manner. But as soon as they have the utility locates, the work will start.
Thank you, Ms. Martina. Further questions? As council is aware, we've been putting money away into reserve funds over the last few years, and this is kind of why we do it, to protect ourselves when we have these increases. So I'll call the questions. All those in favor then of this report? That's carried. Moving on to 9.4.1, moved by Councillor Craven, second by Councillor Martin, that the Recreation Department report REC 2022-07 dated July 12th, 2022 regarding Perfect Mind software be received for information. I almost stole your thunder earlier, but go ahead, Amy, and talk about this great program.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Council. We're really excited to be launching this on Monday. It is Perfect Mind software, which is recreation software, which will give people in Mapleton the ability to actually log into their own accounts, sign their kids up for any type of programming that we have happening, such as camp or before and after school program. They can even pay online via credit card, which people are very excited about. One of the things that a year and a half ago, when this department became part of Mapleton, was people wanted it to be more efficient and friendly, and they really wanted that online service to be able to do all their registrations online. But not only are we going to be able to do children and youth programming online, we will be able to do ice bookings, hall rentals, any type of diamond or soccer field rentals will also all be able to take place online. Residents will be able to log into their accounts and even see a calendar of what is open and available and what is not, what is already spoken for. We are looking forward to launching it on Monday, but we don't want everyone to panic. We're going to offer an education session in August for all of our user groups and any members of the public that would like to come and learn more about how to use the software. It's pretty easy to navigate. It's going to be right off of our website. You just click the button and it'll take you right there to where you need to be to make your account. And from there, you'll be able to go in and do whatever you would like. If any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Well, thank you, Amy. That's pretty exciting. And I know that we've been waiting for this program for a little while now, and it's great that we're launching it on Monday. And we're going to have a training session for people as well. Very important to have that. My only question is, besides recreational programming, what else can people do on this site? Can they purchase dog tags? Can they do other things township wide?
Yes, so we will be using it for other things such as dog tags, facility rental. So if you want the Moorfield Hall or the PMD Arena Hall, you'll be able to do any of those types of things on there as well.
Thank you. And questions then, Councillor Martin.
Mayor, I'm probably more excited about this than I should be. I think it's a pretty cool program. So thank you for pulling this all together, Amy. It's awesome. It should be awesome, right? It's a fantastic level of service to offer people. The only thing I didn't see in the report was what's the plan for like pushing it out to the public? Are we like blasting it out on social media? Like how are we gonna sell this thing?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Martin, we will be blasting it out Monday morning, probably by the end of this week, letting people know that it's coming, and then that we'll be launching it Monday morning. Allie's already been working in the background with us on getting some things ready to put out on, it'll be our Twitter, Facebook, our website and all of that, just to get it rolling. We will reach out. I will also reach out to all of our user groups that frequent like minor sports and such that use our halls and our ice and our fields. I also think it's really important too that we recognize Heather, our deputy treasurer, has done an immense amount of work with this program to get it ready and to ensure that it is doing what finance needs it to do in the background. And she has put an incredible amount of effort into making this happen as well. So I just want to make sure that we're all aware of her efforts.
Thank you, Amy, and I'm glad that you asked that question. I think it's very important that we push it out and how we're going to get that out there. And I'm just going to assume that, you know, once our media folks listen to this, that they'll want to pick up and put an article in the paper, hint, hint. Go ahead, Councilor Douglas.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, just a quick question. Those user groups who, you know, benefit from free facility rentals, how do they get accommodated through the booking service?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So when people book or user groups book an ice time or a hall rental, it looks slightly different in the background. So you, at the time, you're reserving that time slot and nobody else can overbook you. In the background, we will then go in, change your fee. You'll already be registered as a free user group, such as like a Rotary rental maybe or something. Then we will approve their rental. So we'll get a notification from our emails and we'll just hit approve and it will go through and no payment would be necessary.
Thank you. Further questions, Councilor Craven?
Through you to Amy, with older people like me that are very technically challenged, will I still be able to call the township office and book these facilities?
Go ahead, Amy.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Craven, absolutely. We'll make sure that we will do our best, obviously, to help you do that or anyone do that. We are going to ensure that several of our staff members here are also trained and able to use the program.
Thank you. Further questions to Amy? All right. I read the resolution. All those in favor of the resolution? That's carried. Thank you. And moving on to item number 10. And we'll do the first four. And then the last two would be the ones that Councillor Ottens has an interest in. So we'll do this one first, moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Craven, that bylaws number 2022-043, 2022-044, 2022-047, and 2022-049 be read, hereby read a first, second, third time and finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the corporate seal. Any questions or comments on these four? Seeing none, all those in favor then? It's carried. And move on to the next item here, which is moved by Councillor Craven, second by Councillor Martin, that bylaws numbered 22045 and 22046 be hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the corporate seal. This is the one that Councillor Ottens has a conflict in. So all those in favor? It's carried. All right, number 11, council correspondence, council direction. We don't have any council information. There's a number of those there. There's 5 there. Anybody wish to speak to any of those 5? Councilor Craven.
Just with the Crime Stoppers group, we're going very well. We have been meeting virtually for a little over 2 years now. But if at any time you would like to have a speaker come from Crime Stoppers to address council, Sarah would be quite glad to do that. And she does quite a bit of that.
All she has to do is contact the clerk.
Yep.
Yep. We'd be happy to have her. Anything else from council members? Okay, item number 13, notices of motion. Number 14 is there for you. Other business is number 15. Anybody have other business they'd like to bring up? Councilor Craven.
Just a couple things. You were mentioning at the start of the meeting about Mount Forest being closed down, the emergency department being closed down somewhat in the next few days. There are several hospitals in the southwestern area. Clinton, Listowel, Wingham, I don't know, there's half a dozen that are also having to close their emergency facilities because of the lack of staff. And I was informed the other night at a kid's ball game of the passing of a former longtime Maryborough councillor. I don't suppose any of you would ever know him at all. Maybe Marlene might have heard of him, Ken Schilling. He was a longtime councillor and he was on our committee of adjustment for a long time too. He was mid-80s, died in April, I understand.
Send a condolences to the Schilling family then on the passing. Thank you for bringing that forward, Councilor Craven. Any other business that people want to speak to? I know that for myself and for Manny, I know on August 28th, Manny and I met with Aqua, introduced to the new president, Alicia Fraser, and the board chair, Joe Passionetti, I believe his name was. We went out and had dinner with them and had a chat with not only those two, but the board members of Aqua and their executive team, and had a good conversation with them. They're quite interested in what we're doing here in Mapleton. They want to know what our future plans were or are. They're quite interested in their water tower. They love our design, and they want to have a closer relationship with us, which is great for us. And over these last few years, we've maybe put the gears to Aqua a little bit with some of the equipment that we've seen, and but they've taken notice of Mapleton, and that's why they invited us out to have a chat with them and the board. So it's good to have that. I know that again, I said earlier that Manny and I had a meeting with John Nader, which is good. On the 30th, we had the tank lifting. I know that that was quite. With that, the tank lifting that Ali put together and put on the social media and sent out to us of the time lapse, it was amazing, and I've so many people have commented on that lifting, so it was very good. And I have to commend staff, Amy and Ali and all the staff involved on the Canada Day celebrations we had. They were well done at the Mapleton area fairgrounds with the bouncy castles, the face painting, the balloon art. The concert, the fireworks were absolutely awesome this year. And I just want to thank staff for all the efforts, Amy, you and your team, and Ali for putting all that effort into that, because it truly was tremendous after not having anything for a couple of years to have that. And also to the team up in Alma that put together the Alma Canada Day celebrations with their 2.5 hours of fun in the afternoon, and a lot of people out to Alma and that community for their walk around the community, walk around the park parade they have there on Canada Day, as well as their hot dogs and burgers. Very well done for the Alma community. I really appreciated them and really enjoyed myself when I was there. And also our team was there. We had a fire truck there, as well as a grader and a work truck, and they're all there showing off their vehicles and talking to the community. So through Manny to the team and Sam, thank them for us for going out to the community and helping them out. With that, we'll move on to the next item, which is going into a closed session. Moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Craven, that Township Mapleton Council move into a closed session to consider the following subject matters: review and adoption of closed session minutes, June 14, 2022, litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality, personal matters about an identifiable individual, municipal employee, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or behalf of the municipality. All those in favor of going into closed? That's carried. We'll take 5 minutes and then come back for closed.